Namaskar and welcome to Global Insights, episode 315. A shout out to our viewers to like this program so that it can reach its maximum potential. Today is Monday, the 28th of February, and let us look at what is happening around the globe. First off, the Russia-Ukraine developments. Russia's isolation deepens with increasing isolation around the world and economic sanctions kicking in. G7 nations and many others joined to implement the SWIFT ban and Russian connectivity. Russian central bank restricted from free access to sovereign funds. Sridharji, namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel, sir. The first comments on all these different things, sanctions against Russia.
Namaskar, good morning to everybody, and welcome to Monday morning. And as we kick off the week in the United States and probably late evening in India, well, I think there's fast-moving developments. Russia is increasingly learning that it stands isolated in the world. Most sanctions are coming along the way. As we got into this program, further sanctions has come in from United States. United States is going to cut off any kind of central bank connections to the US federal payment system. So you can see now that more and more countries are now beginning to accept the actions that is being pursued by Russia is not rules-based and is not in consistency with the way the global diplomacy and the laws needs to be done. It has attacked a sovereign nation. Everybody has recognized, and the sanctions are coming in, and it's going to hurt the Russians very badly.
And the Russian ruble or ruble plunges 30% with sanctions and more restrictions to come. Russian central bank is more than doubles its interest rate to 20% to stem the sinking ruble. Sridharji, this Russian central bank's move to make it to 20%, that's a hefty rise, sir, and still no takers?
Well, ruble, as we said that, that's the first thing that they should have done, but at least they woke up and they have done it. They're crashing the ruble, and you can see that taking an impact. So it fell 30%. I think on a day basis, it almost close to greater than 100% fall. The Russian central bank had to actually force the rate hike to see whether the currency levels can be held. I just don't think they can hold it. The only salvage to them is, as again came in, one of the large crypto exchanges have come in support of the Russian ruble being transacted on its specific exchange via the crypto. They're the only guys who are supporting. I think rest of the systems are all being slowly turned off and making these guys do commercially transact with the rest of the world pretty hard, sir.
And big cities targeted by Russia remain in Ukraine control despite Russian onslaught. Ukraine forces repel Russian advances to Kyiv, and Ukrainian drone shoots down Russian missile launcher. We have a very compelling video for you. Can we put up the video, please?
Це він тікає, походу, цього бука, я так думаю. Чи ні?
Не успіє.
В сторону.
А може щось упало і пішов подивитися, що. Бігає туди-сюди.
Нарешті. Зараз нам салют. Ох, як все порозлітало гарно.
And Russia has suffered a lot of casualties as per Ukraine. And here is their claims to how many Russian equipment and men have so far been killed or died in battle. So you can see that Ukraine says that 4,300 Russians have so far have been killed and wounded. So it is a total number. And somewhere I read that Ukraine claimed that they had 200 army and about 1,000 injured civilians and perhaps quite a few civilian deaths also. Sridharji, what do you make of this? Because I know there are a lot of people in denial, but this is the truth, isn't it? That Russia is losing heavily.
Russia is the aggressor. Ukraine is the defender. When you are an aggressor, you are moving forward. When you're moving forward, then you are prepared to take the hits. The sad truth here is most of these people who are in the front line in this phase of the battle are very young Russians, aged 21 to 25. I've seen videos of these soldiers conversing with the Ukrainian soldiers and laughing and joking. So many of them are making the statement. They don't know why they're here. They don't know why they're fighting. It's obviously they've been loaded into the vehicles and asked them, given the marching orders to go and fight. So they are fighting. And you can see, as our ex-home minister for state for external affairs stated, these are the fogs of war. And close to 5,000 people have been injured, killed from the Russian side. I think close to 1,700 or 1,800 people injured and killed, civilians, and probably the armed personnel on the Ukrainian side. The other significant number is the number of aircrafts and number of tanks and armored carriers that the Ukrainians have successfully taken out. So notwithstanding all the claims that is being made, you can see that the Ukrainians are putting up a fierce battle, and which is being acknowledged by many people. And this is a very big surprise, and which is making Putin highly irritated and forcing him to do things that probably may eventually cost him the war.
And viewers are saying that, look, this has to be qualified as saying it is the numbers from the Ukraine side. Well, Russia also have said that they have suffered losses. However, Russia has not mentioned the numbers. So it's okay. Look, the problem here is Russia wanted to do a simple takeover because they wanted to rule the whole of Ukraine. They didn't want to destroy a lot of buildings, a lot of civilian things. But now it is coming down to that, and we have to wait and see how this plays out. Putin remains defiant, and a massive Russian convoy is on its way to Kiev. Kiev mayor remains defiant. We are encircled, but we are ready to fight, he says. Putin's nuclear alert triggers shock waves and sends the world into a spin. By the way, there's a program in about 2 hours time with 𝗣𝗚𝘂𝘀𝘀 on this Russia claim that they are going to go nuclear, and we will talk about the impact of that. Sridharji, so Kiev is surrounded. This is the 4th or 5th day, and I have been looking at a lot of news channels, including German, Russian, Al Jazeera, and the British BBC. And I'm seeing everywhere there is a lot of destruction on part of like the Russian side, like tanks and other equipment, sometimes, immobilized convoy trucks. Now they're saying that Russia is sending in the heavy artillery. What do you see, sir? Because the talks have also started now.
Well, first and foremost, whenever you are calling for negotiations, and when both parties agree for negotiations, it simply implies that they're trying to see through this because they don't want to see suffering on either side. It's obviously, it's very hard to conclude. One can say whether Putin wants a way out. Another way to say it is probably Putin thinks he's on an ascendancy. He has galvanized, activated, and put on alert his nuclear forces, which sent shivers down. So he may be, saying to the Belarus guys, or he may be saying to the Ukrainians, either I have your Chernobyl plant. I've already put a bomb in the nuclear wastage dump area, which didn't create radiation, but which created enough rumble for people to get worried. If you don't, then I exercise the right to apply whatever weapon that I can. Let's come to an agreement before we unleash more damage. So this could be his proposition. Why am I saying this? I'm saying this. There's a later news item, but I'll get ahead on that. Jens Stoltenberg, if you haven't had a chance, he is the NATO Secretary General. Please listen to his very detailed press briefing, which triggered NATO into action. Notwithstanding the fact people can paint whatever way they want to paint this, but there's apparently an ultimatum, a letter it's been issued to NATO, which is to say clear 40% of the area that you have and the countries that you support. If you're failing which, you will be met with disproportionate action. They said, okay, if that's the case, we also can activate our forces. So there is a full-fledged activation on the NATO side with this Russian threat. Whether it is a bluff or whether it is a reality, we don't know what he is going to do. But the fact is that the letter that he has issued to the NATO is real. If you get a chance, please listen to the program. You don't need to listen to us. You can listen to the program and draw your own kind of conclusions. So what we're seeing is a Vladimir Putin, who has gone absolutely insane and making statements which he has not done before, which sounds like a man who is very desperate.
And Russia interested in reaching agreement with Ukraine, says negotiator. Both Israel and the church offered to mediate. Do you expect much from the first round, Sridharji, or do you think it will be drawn out to a few more rounds?
I just don't think that much will come out, because what we are hearing is that the negotiating position is we want a president that is acceptable to the eastern provinces and to the mainstream Ukrainians. This is how the prior regime was until it was overthrown in 2014-15. So this is what they're going to say, which this present government is going to refuse. So therefore, there's not going to be a Russian hoisted regime. And Russian position is you are a NATO Western hoisted regime. So this is what the first set of barbings will go on. Until one of the parties blink, I think that this is going to continue for some time. And we'll wait for the European section and see what is happening around Europe before we kind of, further respond to this question, Sriji.
And the UN General Assembly calls for a rare General Assembly session. There are also discussions in progress to strip Russia of its UN role. Does that mean that they will be thrown out of the Security Council, sir?
No, at the moment, no. The Russian, the Security Council, the current presidency is with Russia. So they chair the council. So they're saying they cannot be the aggressor. They cannot be presiding over the Security Council discussions. So the Security Council discussions were presided over by Russia, in which 3 to 4 nations, abstained from voting, including India, UAE, etc. And then you have China and also Brazil, which is not in the P15, P5 plus 10, also has made the claim that it wants to remain neutral. And then, of course, Russia vetoed. So the Ukrainians have made a position, these guys cannot be, and the Security Council voting needs to be removed from the resolution. And hence they passed a second resolution today, which doesn't require a veto, which requires a majority, to summon the General Assembly to discuss and vote in General Assembly on the Russian aggression. So that has passed through, and so there will be a rare General Assembly where you're going to find a P5 member being condemned in a General Assembly session.
And in Europe's update, Europe and Canada shuts airspace to Russian flights. Now, Russian planes cannot fly over Europe. They cannot go to Canada. They probably can fly to China, and through China to perhaps some other destinations. Even Japan and I think ASEAN have also now shut it off, or where do things stand with them, Sridharji?
No, they have not formally shut off the airspace to the Russian aircraft. But there is a huge no-fly zone around that entire area of Ukraine, Belarus, in that. I think we covered that in a couple of sessions ago. There's a huge no-fly type of a zone or restricted zone for the commercial aircraft. So that is a huge impact. But some of the Asian countries are beginning to impose restrictions, trade restrictions, banking restrictions, and other types of restrictions. So it's only a matter of time before there's a formal ban or formal restriction being applied on the airlines.
And UK says logistical failures and Ukraine resistance slows Russia's progress. Many countries, including Latvia, grant permission to its citizens to fight in Ukraine. So this is not just Ukrainians defending their land. There are many European countries now who are saying that if you feel that you need to join this fight, you may do so. Isn't it, Sridharji?
It is. So I think we said we'll answer in this specific section. Now, NATO's response force has been activated. taking the threat of Russia very seriously. Yes. Okay, number one. Number two, many of the NATO countries are individually sending either people, they are sending resources, they're sending supplies, military supplies, and now they are also willing to have their citizens living in Ukraine, or citizens who are willing to go and fight, they're sending the people. So you're almost beginning to see a form of a mini coalition, a Ukrainian coalition and a Russian coalition, which right now has Belarus, which has come forward and said it will be supporting the war. It will be working with the Russians in the fight against Ukraine.
And Germany makes a historic shift in defense and increases spending to over 2% of its gross domestic product. And Germany also to supply 1,000 anti-tank weapons and 500 Stinger missiles. Germany also to bolster more troops to Eastern Europe, closer to Russia. Viewers, you should remember that 1/4 of Germany was under Russian occupation for 45 years and was communist. That's called as the German Democratic Republic, GDR, or East Germany. And the Germany's unified, I think, in 1991, if I'm not wrong. And now, as a country, Germany was one of the last ones to say that, okay, now I understand where things stand. In fact, Germany is the one that stands to lose the most because the Nord Stream 2 is now shut off. And they are also now saying that what the NATO is deciding is what we want to do. They have thrown in 100% of the country behind this effort. Sridharji, we are seeing that avowed communists are also coming on again, turning against Russia. Yet, there are people who are still doubting this and saying that this is West media, putting up some things. What exactly can be done, Sridharji? I mean, this is the truth.
No, I think that we are not here to change the discourse. We are here to deliver our discourse as we see it. We're not here to tell people to change their positions. We're here to tell people to use data and your own judgment. If your judgment seems to be the other way, so be it. We kind of accept it. The facts are here on the table. So people kind of take up, United States invaded Afghanistan, Iraq. No, we are talking about Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Now, just let's stick to that domain and let's speak to it. Okay, Russia has no justification, and all this BS around Russia is surrounded, blah blah blah, and they are of an existential threat. All this is nonsense. Russia has never had a democracy. Russia, this is the guy whosoever opposed him, he has threatened. And, we condoned all of that. Not that, the other countries didn't do it, but I'm just trying to say that look at the facts of the case objectively here. What did Ukraine do? Did Ukraine provoke? Ukraine said, I want NATO because you told me that when you wanted me to disarm the nuclear weapons, that I would be given a deterrence and I would be given a security protection. So what you're witnessing here is the two sides of the coin, and somehow there is a belief that this is a Western sinister agenda to somehow, contain Russia. Russia supplies 42% of gas and energy to Europe. They have a trade partnership. One of these days we only touched on the tip of the iceberg in terms of the data. Some of the largest trading partners of Russia are in Europe. The country that gave a helping hand to Russia to come out over the last 2 decades is Germany under Angela Merkel. So Mr. Vladimir Putin must get some perspectives. They were not sending nuclear weapons into and threatening Russia. They wanted a harmonious, economically uplifted Russia to be on course and working with the Europeans. But obviously, things didn't work out that way, and things went astray. So this is my view, and if you don't agree with it, so be it. But there are these other facts. It is also supplies wheat. It supplies very important commodities like minerals like nickel and aluminium. It is one of the largest wheat producers. It supplies. So there is enormous amount of goodwill that can come out. Many of these, as Sriji pointed out, many of these countries which were under the old Bolshevik Union of Soviet Socialist Republic, wanted their freedom because there was no harmony. There's only one shoe fits all agenda that was pushed. They wanted their own. So they got it. Well, you want the example? The two eastern provinces in the Donbass region said, we are Russian dominated. We want their own freedom. So if they want their own freedom and autonomy, why cannot Ukraine have it? So this is the nonsense that, people take, different facets, but without looking into the contours of this specific war. We're talking about Russia-Ukraine current problem. We're talking about Russia-Belarus. We have consistently talked about the flirtations of law by Belarus in terms of illegally transporting illegal immigrants across the various adjacent European nations. We have talked about lack of democracy and the power grab by the Belarus president. So, this is the law of the land that we are looking at, and it is Europeans to be blamed for being in slumber, and it required a nuclear deterrence and a nuclear threat to wake them up, and now they have woken up. There's another great video of the Sunday Bundestag session, which was attended by almost every member of the Russian House. The German House. You must listen to Mr. German Chancellor Schloss's speech and see how Germany has rallied and turned the corner in terms of taking this issue very seriously and unifying in some way the NATO, which was very much divided.
And also, I might add that we now know what happened at the border of Poland and Ukraine to the returning Indian students. Evidently, there was a stampede, and everybody, not just the Indian students, but also Ukrainians, were trying to board few buses, and this was a free-for-all, and there was lathi charging and caning that happened to everybody. It wasn't just directed at one set of people. And now the Indian government has stepped in and have found 20 buses that are waiting at the border exclusively for the use of Indian students, so that they can go from the border to wherever the airport is, where they need to catch a flight home. So this is what has happened now. So that should be all again under control. It's very unfortunate that so many thousand students are stranded there, but this is the latest information we have. And as Sridharji mentioned, Stoltenberg says that Russia has issued an ultimatum to NATO. NATO will invoke Article 5 if any of its member states are attacked. In a surprise move, Turkey will be enforcing Baltic Sea access to Russian ships. This is again another change. That Turkey was supposed to be a very stable partner of Russia, and even Turkey has turned. Sridharji, this is also a significant move, isn't it?
It's a very significant move. Turkey's move is very significant. It wanted to stay initially neutral. Now they're saying no. The war by Russia in Ukraine is illegal, and therefore it says, I will now work with NATO. I am a NATO member, and I will comply, and I will do what I need to do to make sure in the Black Sea Russians don't have a free reign. I think it's an amazing development. Again, as I came into the show, I have also heard a ticker that is coming into me, which says that Greece is working towards invoking Article 5. It is possible some Russian ships violated the territorial or the maritime boundaries of Greece, and which means that they can invoke self-protection, which is Article 5. So the story is that Russians have left no friend to be. They've turned every guy into an enemy, barring the few who are outside their providence. And this is why the headline item was, as Russia stands increasingly isolated. Is that what is calling Russia to negotiating table? We don't know. Time will tell.
And from Poland to Romania to Baltic states, all nations support Ukraine in its fight against Russia. Now let's take a look at Asian news. Japan, Singapore, and many nations joined mainstream nations in implementing swift restrictions and sanctions. Singapore to also impose banking and trade restrictions on Russia. Shinzo Abe urges the US to abandon its strategic ambiguity on Taiwan in a rare press statement. Over 71% Japanese support Russian sanctions and urge Japan to strengthen its defenses. So ASEAN and Japan have also now joined this swift bandwagon. Sridharji, now where will Russia trade other than China, perhaps to some extent with India? Where else will Russia be able to trade, sir?
Oh, they are very good friends in Cuba. They are very good friends in Venezuela. They're very good friends in some of the Central Asian republics are aligned. They probably will also still Hong Kong trade, so they may do something with Hong Kong. It remains to be seen what then happens because Hong Kong is still very heavily connected. It's one of the great payment corridors. What happens to the SWIFT in Hong Kong is a big mystery because there are some of the Western banks operating in Hong Kong as well. So I think he is not concerned. Madmen are not concerned about the monetary implications. They are never concerned about their people when they are power hungry and pursue a path which is dealing with their obsession rather than strategic interest. Russia did not need to get into this, but unfortunately, it has gotten itself into real tango. You want to listen to an interview? Listen to Condi Rai's interview as to why Vladimir Putin has chosen this path, whether he has bitten more than he can chew, whether he expected a divided NATO and divided Europe, hence he could prevail, is a calculation that he took in pursuing this path, probably to his own consternation. Is beginning to realize probably that it is a big mistake.
And in US news, Biden defends Russian sanctions and says it prevents world war. It's time for US to recognize Taiwan, says many analysts. 62% of voters say Putin would not have invaded Russia if Trump were president. Here you go. Sridharji, already many people are murmuring that you and I are Trump supporters. This is just what we are reading from data from polls. Take it or leave it. This is just data. Sridharji, you want to add something?
Well, I think that I just want to say that there is a CPAC conference going on in Orlando. There's major statements coming out of CPAC. Mr. Trump has been interviewed. He made a very profound statement, which I will again repeat. He said, Mr. Putin is intelligent and Mr. Biden is dumb and ignorant. That is why we are in this situation. He is smart, and that is why he has made his move, and he is making the world look like, little fools until now, when they have all regrouped together and trying to put up a united front. So I'm not surprised. So, Trump is, as I think our esteemed minister stated, the minister whom we interviewed the other day stated that, hey, why people fear Trump? Because Trump is unpredictable. So that's why you hear these types of statements coming out. There should be no surprise.
And I think yesterday or the day before, Trump also praised the Ukrainian resistance, sir.
He did. He's been a supporter. He's been a supporter of many of the NATO countries. He has effectively... Look, I think the person who read United States very well is Prime Minister Modi. He said, you want to work with United States? There's only one way. You have to trade. The working with United States is about a trade. And this was exemplified by Mr. Trump. We are discussing this deal. There are no guarantees. Please remember, Mr. Modi can speak English very well, and he also is a very good negotiator. So, but we're going to have fun discussing the free trade agreement and some restrictions. And so therefore, it's going to be a good discussion. So in that lies the what United States and United States policy. So that's why Modi is able to work with, Prime Minister Modi is able to work with the US as he sees appropriate. And he's able to work with all of the nations because it's all about trade, trade, and trade.
And Ukraine war calls for energy independence, energy experts running for House and Senate say. So this again is an indirect hint to say that perhaps Keystone Pipeline must be reopened. Sridharji, any update on that?
Nothing, because they are, John Kerry made a statement. He appealed to Vladimir Putin. Sir, we covered this here, which is to say, please, Mr. Putin, don't forget your climate agenda in your pursuit of Ukraine. Please keep your focus on that. Well, the guy went and next day, bombed the hell out of all those oil depots and other storage areas, firing up all those gases into the air. This is Putin, and this is how some of the Democrats read their climate policy. I think that we have, in the United States, we have screwed ourselves big time by cutting down on these stupid things. Cut this, cut that, and so on, and then we'll put billions and billions of dollars. I think, I don't know, the last number that I saw was close to about $200 billion, $85 billion was approved, but this $200 billion was given for this climate agenda. So, and yet these guys are flying in private jets and, scooting around with jet fuel, but they talk about climate agenda. And what they've done, they've cut down all the pipes. And this, I think we covered this again, there's 12 licenses pending for LNG drilling, and to go to surplus and to be energy powerful, we are now in, and then we are asking and begging nations to pump more oil, especially OPEC plus.
And in India news, 4 Indian ministers to travel to Ukraine neighboring countries to coordinate the evacuation. Second India-Africa Defense Dialogue in Gujarat starting from the 12th of March. India to host ASEAN grouping foreign ministers meeting later this year in India to review free trade agreements and seek more market access. Sridharji, this is the last segment of our news for today. You can wrap it up, sir, and perhaps weigh in on how you think the General Assembly is also going to go today.
Great. I think to wrap up, I think the way I put India's advancement of the agenda, which is trade, and economics, and security is as follows. The world is divided into 3 buckets. A bucket which is consummated in this war because they have no other choice and it's been inflicted. The second is benign indifference. These are smaller nations which are saying, I got to live every day. And then you have very few nations, such as India, which is saying, I have an opportunity. It is happening far in remote corners of the world. So let me get on with my business. So it's continuing to do business. I think the discussion with Africa is very important because Africa has been quoted by China, and they have been spending a fair amount of time. Remember, Turkey also, Erdogan visited close to about more than 30 to 40 locations in Africa to strengthen the ties. So the Indian dialogue is very critical within that context. The ASEAN, I think it is now going to the next phase. Why RCEP membership India refused, and as well as the broader the Indo-Pacific, broader Pacific, Trans-Pacific treaty, because it felt that it has multiple bilateral agreements. So agreement with ASEAN for market access is critical. So India is carrying on in its own manner. To wrap it up, I think there's more action that we can await. The Ukrainians have put up a fierce resistance. What will happen in the General Assembly? General Assembly will condemn because they have votes in General Assembly. And there you cannot use the veto power. General Assembly will pass a resolution condemning the actions of Vladimir Putin and Russia, and not the people, but it is the government which is running the country right now, because even within Russia and Russians around the world are protesting their government's actions, which is putting them to shame and putting the world to risk, in my humble opinion. So anyway, so that's my concluding. And one important piece of news, as we kind of, which is breaking as we speak, the Toyota's automotive plant, one of the systems has been cyber attacked, and they have basically shut down the production. So we will cover this tomorrow. It is just, a news breaking out. And what exactly is the scope of the attack? And has this attack come from, again, our very good Russian friends to our audiences, whether they have launched something against Japan, because Japan is not surrendering an island to this Russian maniac.
Yes, indeed. And many of you may not know this. After the day after Japan surrendered in 1945, Russia declared a war against Japan over a set of islands called Kuril Islands, K-U-R-I-L-L Islands. And this is still, I think, not resolved. Anyway, that's it for today. Thanks for
No, one
joining.
minute. I think we have covered extensively the Kuril Islands. We have covered the Russian Deputy Prime Minister visiting that and basically provoking the Japanese and further expanding that line of demarcation into not only the contested area, but further expand. I think we have covered this with map and so on in Daily Global Insights. Go back and take a look and you will see it. So we needed to pitch on that segment as well, Sriji. So sorry to butt in and make that statement.
Not at all, sir. You are absolutely right. It is in DGI. We will try and see if we can find the link for viewers. We are giving data the way we see it. And if we are horribly wrong, we are horribly wrong. But our track record is pretty good thus far. So you have to keep that in mind. You can comment anything you want. It doesn't bother us, because what we are saying is something that has been carefully checked and double checked. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel, and also click on the join button. In about an hour and a half's time, we will be joining 𝗣𝗚𝘂𝗰𝘀𝘀, who is actually looking at some things. If these things get dragged out, what are Russia's options? Will Russia go nuclear? And will Putin drag Xi into this mess? So far, China has been sort of in and not really in. And we have to see how that plays out. So all those things will be discussed in that program. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in a bit. Namaskar.
Thank you. And thanks for the provocative, listening to a provocative alternative view. And I know you guys will critique, but that's okay. That's part of, we are giving our perspectives, and we'll see you back on Wednesday.